Okay, next up, I should have said at the outset, if you know CLIMAS, you know that we do lots of different things. So now for something completely different, as much as I find myself. So George Frisvold is an economist and a professor in our School of Ag and Research. I almost use the acronym, which would be meaningless.
Yeah.
It's like my
Okay, so what's the issue? Colorado River's over-allocated. There's more rights to use water in the river than there is water. And there's been recent annual declines in lake mead levels. Once lake mead falls below a certain level, it triggers a shortage declaration. The most junior water rights holders, which is Central Arizona, CAP, they get their water cut back first. So agricultural users of CAP water are the first ones that are going to have cutbacks if there's a shortage declared. Now, Bureau of Reclamation does periodic forecast of the probability of shortages being declared. They report these. Arizona Department of Water Resources report these. Virtually every extension meeting on water and water supplies reports these probabilities over and over again. So, give you an indication of what's going on. There's the 2012 lake mead levels, then 2013, 14, 15, 16. This is when a shortage is declared. So there's lots of wailing and gnashing of teeth. Now things have changed because it's a better year now. And so this is from an earlier CAP shortage fact sheet. Basically, they were saying that there's going to be 320,000 acre-foot reduction primarily in ag water supplies. And then at the time of this publication, there was a more than a 50% chance in 2017 of this happening. So there was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth, especially among agriculture, because they were where the hits would come. Here's an example of the kind of probabilities that get reported. This is at a ABWR meeting, and that they report, out what's the likelihood of shortages of different severity. And it's actually the cutoff, the amount of water that gets taken away from central Arizona actually ramps up as these get more severe. So this was as of 2015, and we had like this kind of gloom and doom, and there was a lot of talk in the agricultural irrigation district community about what's going to happen if there's a shortage. This is what we got this summer. This is from the San Francisco Chronicle. 0 chance. So here's somebody from Bureau of Rec saying there is a 0 chance this year. Okay, so it's kind of, for my project, this is an interesting experiment because
when we wrote the proposal,
we moved everything up because we were thinking like, oh bleep, we're going to have a shortage, and doing an ex-ante study, the shortage after it happens has less value. But the experiment's, I think, still interesting. So the first question is, what do people do with what contingencies are Central Arizona farmers and irrigations making in the event of a shortage? Are they planning for it? How are they planning for it? That's one set of questions. And then the other is, how much do these probability measures actually figure into their planning? Do they pay attention to this? Do they take it seriously? Does it really have any kind of influence? Now it's more interesting because people have been told, oh, nothing to worry about. Now, do people stop? If they were planning using this information, do they stop? The other aspect is what economically would actually affect if a shortage were declared and a lot of water was taken away from Arizona agriculture. And the idea is to measure not only the direct effects on agriculture, but the wider economic effects with all the other sectors that are linked to agriculture. Okay, research methods. First part is just like structured interviews of growers, irrigation district, CAP, ABWR. So basically, what have you guys been doing to plan for a shortage? To what extent do you, listen to these probabilities of shortage? And also, a real key thing is growers in central Arizona can always just switch on their pumps. They have enough groundwater rights banked so that basically they can pump as much water as they can. There really isn't a legal limit to how much water they can pump. It's really an economic limit. It's also an issue. They haven't been investing in groundwater pumping infrastructure lately. So one of the things I want to know is if a shortage is declared, to what extent do irrigators just turn on pumps? And that has implications for managing aquifers in central Arizona. The other part is input-output modeling of economic effects to reduce water supplies. So there's the effects on agriculture, and then there's backward linkages to like all the input suppliers of agriculture. And then there's forward linkages, all the wages that people get for farming and profits get spent on things in the community. So what does that do for the wider economy, and what are the implications for jobs? So this is what Bureau of Rec did for their shortage sharing agreement final EIS. They did an economic impact of what a shortage would do. And what they did was they took data from actually our department's cooperative extension crop budgets, and they ranked crops by profitability. So this is like profits per acre foot of water. This might be like greenhouse, veggies, things like that. This is like cotton, wheat, alfalfa. And so they just assume if there's a water shortage, farmers are going to cut production of their least valuable crops first. So yeah, this is what they did in this guideline. And so basically they curtail least profitable production first. Go backwards. Here we go. Way to look at this. This is $1 worth of crops. So I can put all crops on one line. So this is how much it costs to produce $1 worth of crop. So I can put all of them, so basically this is the mirror image of the other graph, where this is all the profits from here, but this is total revenues, and this is production costs. So basically, what they did was they assumed all this production goes down, so farmers aren't spending anything on these inputs, including labor, and they lose this income, so they don't have disposable income to spend. And so there's lost profits, and there's reduced spending on labor and other inputs. Because one of the things they assumed is the only way people would adapt to the water shortage would be to fallow land. They wouldn't do anything else. They would just stop producing on the least profitable acres. Okay, there's multiplier effects. There's induced effects. Farmers have fewer profits. They don't buy trucks. They don't buy any truck. The truck dealership doesn't have any money. The person at the truck dealership doesn't get their commission, so they don't go out to dinner. So that means the waiter doesn't get tipped. So this all feeds through the local economy. So these are these forward linkages that we're going to estimate using input-output modeling. The indirect effects, basically, if you're not growing crops, you're not buying fertilizer, you're not hiring labor, you're not spraying pesticides, you're not buying seed. So there's all these inputs you're not buying, and that filters back to the local economy. And we use input-output modeling. We've been doing this for quite some time. I don't know what Bureau of Rec did, because one thing we've learned in doing this input-output modeling, there's certain agencies and groups like Implant and REMI that put input-output production models together, but their things are based on national averages. Well, the national average production structure for producing a truck in Detroit or Tennessee is about the same. Growing cotton is really different. So the national average is really misleading. And one of the things we've discovered is you really have to get under the hood and change all the accounts to make things true up to local conditions. It's particularly true in Arizona, because Arizona production is kind of an average of very, very large-scale commercial farming and smaller-scale Native American farming. And if you base things just off of average statistics, it doesn't really look like any farm. So you have to do a lot of work to calibrate this model to make it realistic. So here's what they found, Bureau of Rec did. So most of the effect, so they were able to input-output model to look at jobs, look at income. They're not very clear. I assume this is both wages and farm profits combined together. And so these are the direct effects. So these are all the on-farm effects. And this is reduced spending on inputs or consumption goods out of wages and profits in the economy. And you can see that most of the effects are in Pinal County. They're very minor things because these areas don't really get much of a hit in water. But this is really what's going to happen in the Cab area. And that's where most of the action is. So $22 million. So that's all well and good, but they pick numbers from a single year. I've been having my grad student, Jessica, I've been torturing her, going and looking at getting data from Department of Agriculture, getting data from USGS, getting data from Bureau of Economic Analysis, and trying to match the income and water use data on different frames at different times. This is just within USDA, and you can see that depending on what county you're talking about and what year you're talking about, these things are all over the map. She's disaggregated things even more, where there's some years where, actually if you could fallow your land, you'd be better off because you're probably losing money anyway. In other cases, the cost would be a lot higher. So it's really the measure of what a shortage would do to agriculture, that measure is really volatile. So what BLR did was pretty reasonable. Basically all the first steps they took are pretty much the things I think you probably should take. But there's a danger in just arbitrarily picking one year in data source because the numbers are all over the map. And so I think there's a value to doing sensitivity analysis to see what happens if if you have a shortage in a high price year versus a low price year. Another thing that we want to extend is that they assume that farmers are just going to fallow. And that, from what I've been talking to, people I've talked to so far, a lot of them were planning to revert to groundwater pumping, that they were not going to fallow in response to not having surface water. So that has implications, for the active management areas, because this area is basically the Phoenix AMA and the Pinal AMA, where groundwater pumping is, in principle, supposed to be regulated to keep the aquifers from dropping. But it seems like, from my conversations with irrigation districts so far, that they plan on switching the pumps back. Now, I'm going to be interested to see, now that they say, oh, there's no shortage, that everybody goes, oh, we don't have to worry about it. And they all turn off their concern. There's other things you can do. You can switch to less water-intensive crops and technologies. And I played around with ways to actually, the input-output model we use is not tremendously well suited for looking at these things, but I've gotten pretty good at tricking the model into doing technological change. So that's one of the things we're going to look at. Another thing we want to look at is what would happen if irrigation districts entered into voluntary arrangements ahead of time. Because, for example, Bureau of Records had a program to basically pay different water users to not take water in the last few years to, quote unquote, keep the water in Lake Mead, to keep that level up enough so that you don't trigger a shortage. And again, in-plan is well suited for these voluntary things. There's been a lot of studies that say, what would happen in a rural community if they no longer grew certain crops because they lost water? But they usually don't say, well, okay, these guys are, if it's a voluntary thing, they're getting money. So what happens when that money comes into the local economy? Now, in some cases, talking to an Australian ag economist who said these remote areas were getting paid to fallow land and not use water, and they go, oh, well, they got this money, they're going to spend it in the community. Well, they just went to the city to go shopping. So the money was being spent outside. So whether these things actually create a lot of spending in the local community probably depends on whether you live in, like, Casa Grande, where you probably would do a lot of spending in the local community, versus Parker. Gila Bend, nothing to say. Yeah, so where exactly it gets fallow is important. So that's it.
Thank you. As a trained economist, you manage time very well. Questions for George? Yes, sir.
Yeah, groundwater pumping. If you decrease the groundwater pumping, you essentially are decreasing the amount of water in the groundwater bank.
Yes.
You're lowering groundwater levels, you're increasing the cost of pumping that up. Deeper water is not the same quality, so it's getting saltier the deeper you go, and then on top of all that, you have land subsidence. By decreasing pore pressures within the aquifer system, you're causing the clay beds, the silty clay beds, to thin. Water is expelled from them. And that, when you put the water back in, but it won't recover the amount of subsidence going on. Pumping water out of sand, yes, because it behaves elastically. So this idea that we can solve everything just by pumping groundwater has several serious drawbacks.
Oh, I'm not saying there aren't drawbacks. I'm just saying that that's what people are planning on doing.
And I'm pointing out the drawbacks of doing it.
Yeah. Again, that's going to show up in the costs of doing it, but people are planning on doing it.
Oh yeah, cost. Whose cost? When? Not
Yeah.
not this year. Not next year. Yeah.
So, Bonnie, before we take you, Brent's got a question from online.
Yeah, from John Berggren. He was curious to hear your thoughts about the data available for measuring this stuff. He says he's dug into the USDA and NAS, Reclamation, USGS, et cetera data. It seems like they all have different estimates on different years.
Yes, they do. Yeah, we're trying to actually get some kind of central things for why there's estimates. Sometimes there's really, really good estimates. Sometimes like the price of certain crops are double what they were the last year. So it's like, well, if I'm producing the same amount and I'm getting twice as much money, then the value per acre foot is higher. Some of it is methodological differences in how they collect the data, and some is just can be explained by just natural volatility in ag markets, and that's what I'm forcing Jessica to look at. She came in and said, why are we looking at all these different things? And I said, well, are these estimates really good and close to each other? She's like, no. Yes, but you know, some of it's but I'm trying to sort out how much of it's just methodological estimation issues, which are more of a problem, and ones that are just because markets are volatile.
Bonnie, last question.
So we've been looking at payments to farmers in the upper and lower basin under that Keep Water and Lake Mead program, which is very popular with the farmers who are involved because they're getting paid about 10 times the net returns they would have earned growing crops.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if in those areas, so these are the voluntary as opposed to involuntary cutbacks, I wonder if you'll find in some of those circumstances that the ag sector is better off in terms of net returns because of the payments, and then the local economy to trace out where they're spending them, which is an interesting job.
Right, and actually, because it's the cap, because you've got so much ag, you know, because when we were looking at the model, basically it's like the Pinal County, Maricopa County economies. There's probably going to be a lot less leakage in terms of spending out.
Yeah.
Now, you know, if you're like a farm worker or you have the John Deere, you know, machinery thing, you're going to get hurt. But there's probably going to be a lot more consumer spending that actually stays in that region because it's around the urban, it's on the urban fringe.
We will soon know the answer to this question. Thank you, George.